Hey guys, Ken Smith. Before we get into this week's video, I want to ask you a favor. I'm going to ask you to make a comment below, and here's what I want to know. This is just purely out of my curiosity, and I think it'll be interesting for you guys too. I'll post the results. So you get home tonight or tomorrow or Saturday, and you have on your DVR at the house recorded a Bassmaster Elite Series event, a FLW event, and a Major League Fishing event. Which one do you watch first? Which one do you watch second? Which one do you watch third? Or if you watch one and not the other two, or two and not the other one, post it in the comments below, and then behind that, post your age. I'm real curious the demographics of who's watching what, specifically of the 3 or 4 or 5,000 people who are going to watch this video. So if you post that down below in the comments, I'll add it to a future video just to see who's watching what. I'm curious. So let's get to this week's video about how to use Google Earth as a search tool for fishing. So this is our continuing conversation about practice, and not just about practice, but actually about learning a lake. So most people think that we are Rayburn locals, when in fact we're not. We actually live in Dallas, Texas. We live about 203 miles from the lake. We do have a lake house, but we are only down there, every other week probably on average. So there's a lot of time I don't get to spend on the lake that I wish I could. So when I get to the lake, the last thing I want to do is kind of grind through looking at the map and trying to figure out where I want to fish. Or a real danger I have is just continuing to fish the same 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 spots that I've always fished. Now don't get me wrong, I do that a lot, because once you find a spot, fish will visit, whether it be January or July in a given year at a given water level, they're likely to be there again in the future. But what I try to do, and a lot of times when I have those videos where I say I really didn't catch anything today, it's because I'm looking at new stuff. And if you go back to the Albert Collins and Glenn Freeman videos, and I'll put a link right there at the top of the page for if you're watching this on YouTube, one of the things they talk about is how long it takes them to find one of those kind of mother lode spots that you're able to win money off of year after year after year. So one of the tools that I use a lot is Google Earth. Now don't get me wrong, sorry, had to kind of shut down due to a battery issue. There are some advantages to taking time away from the water so that when you get to the water, you have spots you want to go look at. And I'll tell you, I like to have 8 to 15 of these spots if I'm going into a specific area to just sort of inspect. Now inspecting may be fishing them, it may be just going by them with side scan to see if it's a hard bottom, or to see if the piece of structure that I thought I saw there is still really there or was ever really there, or to decipher what it is. Because a lot of times on Google Earth I'll see things that I can't quite figure out what it is, so I go in there and side scan them or drive over them with my down imaging on my Humminbird and get a look at them and figure out exactly what they are. And then a lot of times I'll fish them if I see bait and or fish on them. So Google Earth there's a couple of key things to know about Google Earth that don't get talked about enough when you see these Google Earth videos. The first one is you have got to have Google Earth Pro. You'll see right there in the corner, you have to download Google Earth Pro. Google Earth Pro is free now, so there's not a charge to get it. But what you've got to have on Google Earth Pro is you've got to have that little date stamp right there so you can go back in time on the images, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. The other thing you've got to make sure that you do, you're going to want to put waypoints down. And to put waypoints down, you want to make sure that your format on Google Earth matches your format on your unit, whether there's a Garmin, Humminbird, or a Lowrance, or anybody else's units. You got to make sure they match. So I know, for example, so by the way, to find it, you go to Tools, you go to Options, and I know right here under lat longe that I need degrees, minutes, seconds. You have decimal degrees, you have degrees, decimal minutes. Humminbird gives you 2 options for how you can look at those. So it doesn't matter which one you're using on your unit, on your GPS unit, just make sure it matches which one you're using here. Otherwise, when you get the waypoints you pull up, you're not going to be able to plug them into your unit. So also a thing to know about Google Earth, which is really interesting to me. And it's going to be the same way on your home lake. So this is not a Rayburn specific video, by the way. So let's zoom in. So this is the Buck Bay area. So this is the Ash Arm. And these are these islands up here just on this side away from Buck Bay right there. And what we're going to do, let's zoom in those islands. And let's go to our historical data. So our historical, whoops, sorry about that. So our historical data, you click on the clock right there, and you're able just to say, go back in time. And what you're going to see up here is January of 09, the lake was, is that the lowest one? No, that's November of 12. January of 09 was the lowest the lake got on this part of the lake. So interestingly, if you'll note, I'm scrolling through the dates up here. I don't have November of 11, right? I have November of 12, but I don't have November of 11. And all that means is this is the period of time when the satellite passed over this particular part of the lake and took these images. So back in 09, the lake, as I recall, was down about 157, so it was about 7 feet low. But check this out. So let's go up the lake. Let's go up and look at the Black Forest. So we're going to go up here, 147 Bridge, Calhoun Point. The Black Forest is going to be right about where I've grabbed it right there. Okay. Now remember, the other one, the date we had was November of 9. Well, here we have January of 9, but then we have November of 11 available to us. Well, in November of 11, the lake was at 150. The lake was almost 14.5 feet low. So you've got a lot more shallow stuff, or a lot more deeper stuff, I guess is the way to say that, that you can look at. And interestingly, they don't even have, I don't believe on this one, you have November of 12. I don't think this one has 09. Yeah, it's January of 09. There it is. So it has the same, but it has more detail in 11, which is, you know, really what you want to look at. You want to look as deep as you can. So what you're looking at here are spots along the edge of the water here that at pool are now, you know, 12, 13, 14 feet deep. Now, granted, you can't find any super deep stuff doing this. And by the way, let me show you real quick where to go find that data.
Okay, so when you want to look at the historical data on water level, you've got to go to that website. And I'm not going to read it for you, but you can see it's water data, U.S. government, USGS government, Texas, blah, blah, blah. So there's the whole thing. And then it gives it to you by a river basin. And since I want to look at Rayburn, I got to go down to the Neches River Basin, which is right there. I click on Rayburn right there. That's going to pull up this page. That will show you, by the way, so I know that Rayburn's lake level is 164.4 conservation pool. You actually have to look that up in a little bit different place, but you can find it very easily on a Google search online. So there is my my chart, but what I can do is I can go up here, and I don't know if I can do this with holding a camera in the other hand, but you can change the dates. You can only do it for a year at a pop, but you can change the dates back here, and you can get old lake level data. So when you're looking at those map images, you know, if you remember down on the bottom right on those images, which I think I'll show you again here in a second, you can see the water level at the time that image was taken, which helps you know how deep what you're looking at on the map actually is.
Okay, so the Rayburn fish, and Albert Collins made a really interesting comment to me off camera. He said, you know, there's a lot of stuff he used to catch 20 and 25 years ago, or he'd catch lots and lots of 3-pound fish where he can't get a bite now. And he said, you know, a lot of guys talk about they think the timber fell down or the grass has moved them around. His belief is, and I think he's dead on to something here, the fish in Rayburn now, if you go back and watch the Driscoll video, I'll put a link to the Driscoll videos right there. Todd Driscoll, the Texas Park and Wildlife field biologist that we talked to that knows Rayburn's fish population as well or better than anybody in the world, Todd was telling us that, you know, when they sample fish, Rayburn fish have extremely high Florida genetics in them. Well, there's not a 25-foot deep place in Okeechobee for a bass to go. So those bass have genetically, how do you want to say that, I guess? They have, they are genetically designed, if you will, to live very, very shallow and to feed very, very shallow. So that's why you see guys, and you know, you're going to see somebody in January catch, or probably in the FLW Tour event, catch a really big string of fish on a rattle bait or on a chatterbait or maybe dragging something in less than 10 feet of water, because these fish, they're Florida fish. They want to be shallow to feed. So let's talk a little bit about the kind of stuff I would look for, and also the kind of stuff we've talked about in videos in the past. So let's just say I want to look at, all right, so this is the point that's out there that's actually pretty close to the river. I have a buddy who caught a big stringer of fish out here several years ago. And to me, that looks like some pretty hard bottom in that little vein right there. So let's say I wanted to fish that. Well, I'm going to blow it up as close as I can. And the other thing I'm going to note there is it looks to me like right off the end of that point, there's a couple of really big stumps right there. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say, hey, dude, I want to mark those. I'm going to try to drop a pin on them. And if I want to get really, really specific, I can drop my pin right there. And now I know that that is at 3111, 4462, 9416, 4451. Now, there is a way, using Google Earth, you can drag and drop those waypoints into a file and load them directly under your GPS unit. If you read on Hummingbird's informational pages, what they'll tell you is if you download waypoints into your Humminbird unit, there is some chance you corrupt all the waypoints on your unit. I'm not going to do that. So what I do is I do exactly what you just saw there. I set that waypoint. I go over here, and by the way, I have a terrible memory, so this helps me with this a lot. I get my snipping tool, and I just create me a snip, right? And I will, and a lot of times I'll either write it right in here, I'll go in there and I'll say, whoops, I gotta close that out. No. I'll just go in there and I'll say, forest, if I could spell writing sideways, point by river, sorry guys, and then stumps. And now I can go in there, and what I do, and please don't tell my office I do this, I just do the snipping tool, I create a snip. Now I know exactly what that is. I will actually print those. I carry little 3-ring binders with me on these days, especially when I'm out fishing like Costa stuff or I'm out of town and I know I may not have great access to my computer like I do at the house at Rayburn. And I'll just make a whole bunch of these, and then when I get down there, matter of fact, I'll show you on camera. Let's do that right now. Okay, so now I go to my Humminbird unit. And by the way, I had to do a quick cutaway, so I may have just very slightly different coordinates, but they're not off more than, you know, a degree or two. So I come back in here, and I know this is the general area, right? So I'm going to say, all right, well, I think that those stumps are maybe right there. So I mark a waypoint, right? And then I go, I want to go to my menu. So I say, give me some menu. And I'll say, I want to edit that waypoint. I go down here. And you can see I've got my waypoint in there, 3111, 747. Well, I actually need 745. Exit, drop down one more. And I need 16742, so I'm off a good bit there. 4, whoops. 2, exit. You have got to hit save. I can't tell you how many times I've done what I just did and didn't hit save. You say save, and now I know that when I roll up in there, I can make a Carolina rig or a crankbait or a football jig cast right dead on those 2 big stumps that are on that point, sitting just off that river swing out there at the end of the forest. So it's really simple, and it's a way, well, let's go back to the other video, but this is a great way for you to do some practicing, if you will, or make your practicing a lot more effective when you get to the water, for those of us that don't get to spend every other day on the water. You know what, before we go back to the other stuff, I want to make real sure that I show you guys real cleanly again how to do that. So you simply go up here to edit, oops, you go up here to tools, options, And there you go. So you've got decimals, degrees, minutes, seconds. For the way I have my unit currently set up, I want degrees, decimal, minutes. So that's how you go back in there and make those changes to make that spot I just marked match up with the format on my GPS unit, so that it'll properly place that waypoint. So now I've got that spot right there marked on my GPS. I can run right to that spot. Actually, I can't run to that spot because it's pretty spooky out there right now. But I would know, for example, that when I get there, I keep trying to close that and I realize it's a snip. I can't close it. That is so the lake right there was 14 feet low. So the lake right now is 4 feet low. So that stump's probably sitting in 10, 11 feet of water. Probably exactly something I want to be dragging or throwing a crankbait, throwing a big cloud crankbait out. I could just bang the crud out of that right now with the Cloud 15 crankbait. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. And what I would do, I'll just show you some of the stuff I would probably mark in here. So that right there, guys say, what's a drain? Well, there's a perfect example of a drain right there, right? It's just a main lake out here and there's just a drain running up in there. So I would probably mark that drain, and then I would probably also, just because I like the looks of that, I would mark that little point and that little point as well. Again, I do the same thing. I just go up there, I drop a mark on it, and then I would remember what that was. And by the way, what you can do is you can say, okay. So as you're making those single pagers, if you will, you can say, okay. And then you might do one additional snip where you back out quite a bit bigger so you kind of know what that is. You go back in there again, and you'll see this in my notebook. If you ever sit down with me and look at my notebooks, I will have sort of macro pictures like that, and I might write across their stump. And I do some of this actually in PowerPoint because it's really easy to do. I would write in their stump, and then I would have single pages on those two little spots so that I knew what they were, or I knew kind of where they were in relation when I ran back in there to look at those places. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. This is unbelievably good to find creek swings. So let's go back. I was going to show you one of those a second ago. As I was playing with this earlier, I saw one. So we're going to go up the ash arm. And so that's the old road bed running across the back. I call that the ash arm. So those are Bear and Pompano creeks. And that's Devil's Fork Creek that runs in there and runs up against the highway back there. But right out here, so let's zoom in. I think I can see it at this depth actually. And by the way, it's helpful to make notes to yourself what date you were looking at these. So you can see right there, January of 09. Go back to that USGS website I showed you earlier so you know what water level it was when you found these spots. But look at this. So one of the things I love to fish in the springtime when the fish are coming up to spawn is that first swing, if you will, near a point. And look at that right there. You can see that creek running there and making that swing right there. That is a spot, man. I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a fish caught there, but it's a spot that after playing with this, I'm going to go in there and check next time I'm out into the lake just because it's such a cool looking spot. And you can see there, by the way, that's a concrete roadbed running across there. Now, obviously, those are potentially great spots, right? You see the creek running through there, and you got a blown out bridge. But that's the kind of spots everybody's fishing. Probably way less people fishing those creek swings back there. I mean, look at that creek swing. So there's where Devil's Fork Creek runs into that other creek. Those are the kind of places you really want to kind of be looking for. And I mean, it is so easy to find this stuff once you have this. Once you get in here and look at the old data on these, I'll show you. Okay, so as we talked about, after doing the videos with James Niggemeyer, if you haven't seen those videos, I'll post a link right there. If you're watching that on YouTube, you can click on that little eye. But this is just more conversation about how to practice, how I practice, and we're going to talk to some more guys in the future about how they practice as well. But I got to tell you, Google Earth is a great tool that doesn't cost anything. You use it in combination with your chosen electronics, mine are Humminbird, obviously, but it'll work with all of them. And it's just a spectacular tool to find stuff, you know, all over the country. I've got a rock vein on Texoma that runs out in a little lake. Texoma's been down a bunch, but there's some great imagery at Texoma. There's also some great imagery of Richmond Chambers. I mean, it's just Bob Samlin. There's some great imagery of Texas lakes, and I'm sure all across the country as well, that you can go back, look at that imagery, mark spots, stumps, rocks, house foundations, Tawakoni, sunken lawnmowers, sunken refrigerators, literally lots of sunken boats. Tawakoni, the place where boats go to die. So it's a great tool. Hope this was helpful for you guys. Please click that you enjoyed this with a like. It helps me a bunch in the whole getting more views on YouTube, because it tells YouTube's algorithm that people like my videos, and it means a lot to me, and I appreciate it very much. So there you go. We will see you guys. Actually, we're on the water right now. I'm going to head out here in just a few minutes and spend some more time on Rayburn this week, and we got some great video coming up from this week I think you're really going to enjoy. Thanks, guys.